God said that life is in the blood and prohibited Jews from consuming blood. So, why is it that Christians are able to consume Christ's blood in the Eucharist? I'm excited to explore this topic with you this week on Christ Revisited. Welcome back to Christ Revisited. This is Christopher. And as we've been looking at the series on sacrifice, and today I want to talk a little bit about blood, which needs to be talked about. In the last video, we talked about the topic of the bloodless sacrifice. And obviously, if there's a bloodless sacrifice, there's also something going on with blood. And when you look at the ancient world, you see through, say, Greek civilizations, Egyptian civilizations, a constant use of blood in ritual. And sometimes it's consumed, sometimes it's sprinkled or touched upon by the skin. But one of the things that makes a huge difference between what was going on in the pagan culture is that of what God of the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, otherwise, as we might say, the Jewish tradition from the Old Testament. The huge contrast is that blood is prohibited from ever being consumed. So as most people know who've done a little bit of study of the Old Testament, that probably the most important story and certainly feast or festival within the calendar of the Jewish tradition is Passover. And of course, Passover just happens to cross over with the Christian tradition. So, looking at the significance of blood is probably the core of a theological examination of the use of it in the Jewish tradition and then moving into the Christian tradition. So, this is just a quick kind of conceptual overview. What I want to convey most importantly is from Leviticus, it said that the life is in the blood. And because of that, God prohibits the use of the consumption of blood. But at the same time, in the Passover, what we see is the brushing of the branch of the hyssop tree. That's actually used to protect from the angel of death. So, that alone, the use of blood to protect from death, really points through the entire strain of the Old Testament. And we're going to be able to examine that more fully over time. But what I wanted to convey is blood, most of the time for the Jewish practices, was dumped out, most of it, and then some of it was sprinkled. So imagine the sprinkling of blood in a temple that's used to, guess what? Purify. So blood represents purification for Israel, and sometimes it's also in pagan traditions used for purification. So then we must ask ourselves, how in the heck did that transform in the New Testament in what Christ then, during the Last Supper, when he institutes the Eucharist and the conception of the Eucharist, he says, "This is my blood," and he also points to that in famously in John 6 that you must consume my blood. So these kinds of ideas, imagine the Jewish tradition being told, who were explicitly warned never to consume blood, to suddenly be told that they must consume blood. And so what we have here as we transition into this new phase of its expression inside of Christianity is something really profound, because the Eucharist, we're explicitly told we are to receive this blood, we are to take this blood into our own bodies, and it's called communion. And if we think about communion or union, it's the closest kind of concept in other traditions might be yoga, where we're told that yoga is a union with God. But here we're actually partaking of this actual blood of Christ. And so I just wanted to simply give you something to really chew on as the contrast between the ancient world and pagans, both at the bloodless side of it and the blood side of it, because I think over time this will start to really become a little stone in your shoe that might irritate you a bit as you kind of think about um, the contrast. And the reason I say that explicitly is the point of this presentation, this podcast, is to get us to think and to think historically and to use contrast to give us a sense of our history. And sometimes what was done in the pagan world is a kind of type or even image, in a sense, of what is properly being done, I would say, inside of the Jewish Christian tradition. But there's still a kind of image or mere type that's going on in these other traditions, oftentimes for very bad purposes. And sacrifice was oftentimes used in ways we don't really want to talk about, such as with Moloch at the time of the Jewish tradition. So if you haven't yet subscribed, I would love you to subscribe. It definitely helps as I'm a brand new channel. And I look forward to continuing to unpack and uncover these contrasts in religious traditions. This is Christopher. We'll see you next time. Till then, this has been Christ Revisited.